All right. Well, thank you, Kenny Jacobs, for joining us today. Kenny, you are in solo or an office share practice here in Omaha. I've known you for a bunch of years. You're on the lawyer referral service leadership. You have really, since you've come into the city, you've taken on an active role in bar associations, in volunteering your time. So thank you for all that you've done. And for those who are on today watching, can you give them a little bit of background on your solo practice and where you're at today?
Yeah, I've been in Omaha for a little over 6 years now. Been in practice for 11 years now, almost 12, I guess. And I had clerked. I didn't go to law school in Nebraska. I went to University of South Dakota, and I got a job in Sioux Falls right after practice. And while I was in law school, I did clerk for a summer in Omaha, and always kind of wanted to be in Omaha. And my wife always wanted to be in Omaha, so we made a jump a few years ago, and I decided just to try hanging my own shingle, and so far so good. It was a situation where I had interviewed at other places and just hadn't been able to get a job, so I was just going to try hanging my own shingle and going from there. And like I said, so far it's been very rewarding, and there's also been times when it hasn't been as rewarding, obviously, with any business venture, but it's been very good so far.
And your practice areas, you're coming from criminal practice, so there's that component, but what sort of practice are you in now?
Yeah, so I was a public defender. So the easiest thing for me to do when moving was to get on the court appointment list for Douglas County. I as a public defender, you only worked in one county prior to me moving here, and then once I moved here, I started taking on. I hustled. I was, I found an office where there was other attorneys in an office share environment, and I would cover a hearing here and there, whether it be in juvenile court, whether it be in criminal court, for whatever the court appointed rate was, that attorney would pay me, and just tried to hustle to make sure I was able to pay my bills. I also got put on the juvenile court appointment list because I had done juvenile work as a public defender, so I was pretty comfortable doing those two things. The other thing I did was to just try and get involved with the organizations, the OBA, the Criminal Defense Bar Association, the Nebraska State Bar Association as well. So I just tried to, part of that was volunteering at the self-help desk when that was open. Obviously, it hasn't been open for quite some time now due to the pandemic, but it was a way to meet other lawyers that I just to kind of get my name out there, and just to kind of meet other lawyers through volunteer, through going to social events, through going to getting on the lawyer referral committee and things like that. So
and really, I mean, diversifying your sources of referrals, right? Fellow attorneys, appointment lists, lawyer referral service. I guess there are attorneys out there that only will practice in a certain area, but they'll get calls from people saying, "Do you know a criminal defense attorney?" And if you're the name that they're giving, then that business comes to you. And so being known in the community is a great way to build a solo practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And there was a lot of things that I took on that I didn't really want to take on at the beginning, but I was doing it. So like I said, so I could help pay some bills. I was doing, some volunteer work, through the state bar, and also doing low fee work through the state bar as well, like through the various programs they have through VLP. And it's something where I've continued to work through VLP and things like that, even though it might not be my typical practice area. I've continued to try and give back through as I'm able to, at least. So
yeah. And can you talk a bit about the nuts and bolts of your practice? So any support staff, any systems that you're using that you find helpful for your practice?
Yeah. Yeah, so right now, I'll go back a little bit. I think the biggest thing was I looked at a few different office spaces and I found an office space that worked out well for me. I wanted to try and keep overhead as low as possible for the first couple years. And I found an office share at the historic library building, which is no longer available because the housing authority bought that. So my biggest advice would be, look at a few different office spaces if that's something that you're able to do as a new solo practitioner, and find something that you feel comfortable with. Like I said, I fell into a good spot where there was an attorney that did like only probate. There was an attorney that does only family law. There's a couple attorneys that do mostly juvenile law, and so if there were things that I had questions about, they were very nice and very open to answering my dumb questions. If that's not a possibility for office space, then try and find some people that you can call a mentor, or you can bounce some ideas off of, because one of the harder things in going to solo practice was I came from an office of 20 something attorneys, and you could bounce ideas off of each other and say, hey, I'm thinking about filing this motion, or I'm thinking about doing this or that on a different case. And they kind of give you like a devil's advocate or different viewpoint on how to look at it. Right now, I have, after we left the library building, the group of us that were there decided to find an office share. So we found a space, and it's similarly priced to what we were paying at the library building. The previous office share I had a receptionist through the property management company that answered phones, and right now we honestly don't have that with the pandemic, because we did bring her over on a part-time basis, but she is in the high risk categories during the pandemic. So we've been working without a receptionist or someone answering phones for about a year now. When I first started, I bought an all-in-one color copier printer. So I tried to keep costs as low as possible on I didn't rent a big machine, just went to Costco and bought an all-in-one. I bought a laptop, and the practice management software that I use is CLE, and that's been honestly huge for me, because it took a little bit of time to get it built up, but in CLE, or in my case, or a lot of practice management software, they have the ability to build templates and to do automatic document processing. So when for instance I get a court appointed or get retained, or whatever the case may be, there's certain documents that I can just go down the list, and it'll automatically create for me. So that takes away some of the work that a receptionist would do anyway. And I know that for some lawyers that are first starting in solo practice, it's a big fee, because I think a single license for CLE is around $700 a year, something like that. But honestly, like that, that's one of it saves you more money than what you're spending, because of the amount of time that you're able to save on doing invoicing to do the document automation and everything like that.
Yeah, I would second that a system like Clio, saves you from malpractice claims, saves time. That you're not going to miss things once you've done the case and done similar cases. It helps you down the way for sure. Yeah. And billing is super important. Collecting on the work that you've done, and doing it properly and doing it efficiently. It pays for itself. Those systems. Yeah. And Clio is one of the biggest ones out there, and it's really slick. And you have that great printer, but a lot of times you can do a lot of stuff, electronically, that you don't need as much paper, which is good too.
Great. And I didn't want to get into, like a copier lease or something that's very expensive over the course of its life. So that's why I just went for the one time, couple $100 all in one. And honestly, I've tried to go, the pandemic's taught me, hey, you can do more paperless, and with electronic signatures, and the courts have been very good about accepting electronic signatures. So I hope that after all this is done and over with, that's one thing that will continue to remain the same, is the acceptance of electronic signatures on documents and things like that for court filings.
Yeah, and I think you built it the right way. Low cost, because every dollar spent is a dollar you have to earn, in order to break even. And inside where you were practicing, getting, building it up from there. But what makes you a person that fits well with solo practice? What personality traits, or there's certain people that they're just not meant for it.
Right.
And
Right.
certain people that can handle it. And you talked about hustling. I think maybe that's kind of a mindset that's good. But you have to be outgoing in some way. You have to,
Right.
have your resource group of other attorneys. If you could talk on that a little bit.
Right. I've always tried to fancy myself as a hard worker, more so than, for instance, I was on academic probation in college for a while. So it's not something where I was working all that hard, or maybe I was working hard on getting put on academic probation. I'm not sure. But I figured, if I can just kind of put the work in, then it'll come eventually, and things will work themselves out. It is something where, kind of going from a bigger office to going to solo, and really, if you're just leaving law school and going solo, it's something that's a little bit different, because you have to kind of learn to sell yourself when you don't really think about doing that, like why somebody should hire you. And I think, over the last few years, I don't try and sell, what I can't deliver on, and I make that very clear up front. Say somebody comes in with some pretty serious felonies, I'm like, you're going to prison, man. Like, there's nothing I can do that's going to stop that. And I think that they realize, hey, I'd rather have somebody who tells it to me straight than somebody who's just telling me what I want to hear, because ultimately, if kind of tempering expectations from the very beginning, and what you're able to do is what will make a client happy in the end, even if it's not the exact outcome they wanted. If you can at least say, this is, kind of get them prepared for what's going to happen at the very beginning of it, then go from there. But yeah, being social a little bit. I never thought of myself as a social person, honestly, but I guess that's something you have to do, and kind of just put yourself out there when you go into solo practice. Recently, there was an individual that I've spoken with, who was at a firm, and his position was cut back because of the pandemic, and he's gone into solo practice. So I think if you can, find someone who is willing to answer questions, that's one of the bigger things. So
yeah. Can you talk a little bit about value and billing? Firms billing out attorneys $250, $350, per hour, with big retainers and no end in sight. Compared to what are you valuing yourself? You do some flat fee work, I would guess, with criminal side, and an hourly fee too. Can you just talk about the process of finding out how much you should charge for something, the value that they're getting, and why you should be aggressive in actually, saying, yes, I'm worth this amount.
Right. One of the things that I have learned is, and I think I heard this at a CLE like a handful of years ago, I think it was at a small solo conference, but they basically said, if you go out on the street right now, talk to somebody and say, hey, like somebody younger, I guess a millennial, we'll say millennial, and say, hey, you're gonna have to put your hand up in the air, find someone to just stop by randomly and pick you up, and then tell them where you want to go without any idea of how much it's going to be at the end. That's essentially what you're doing on some of these big retainer hourly cases. And they'd be like, well, why would I do that when I can just pull up an app on my phone and it'll tell me exactly what it's going to be before I even get in the car and everything like that. And I was like, that's a really good way to look at flat fees, honestly. And what I've done is I've adjusted my flat fee rates here and there. You know, I've set a court minimum to say, you know, hey, this is what it's going to be if we have a hearing. You know, so for instance, say somebody calls me on a speeding ticket, I'll say this will be my fee to try and get it reduced or thrown out or whatever the case is prior to court. But if we go to court and have a trial on this, then this is what it's going to be. So, you know, I've kind of worked in flat fee with trial fee as well. And I think that the flat fee's gone over quite well. I don't do a lot of trial fees unless it's under my court minimum, and then say, hey, once we go to court, this is what it's going to be in addition. So I've really enjoyed using the flat fee model. I don't do that on any family law cases, though. I do it as hourly on those cases, because I mean, you have no idea how much time you're going to end up spending on one of those cases. But then also, with CLEO, I'm going to be a CLEO spokesperson here, and I'm sure other programs do that. I'm sure other programs do the same. With CLEO, you can set up monthly payments. So say, hey, this is my retainer, but I need half up front, and then I'm going to take your card and I'm going to do monthly payments or biweekly payments or weekly payments, whatever you're comfortable with and whatever amount you're comfortable with. And we're just going to set up a reoccurring payment for whatever you want it to be. And as long as I get the credit card on file that day, I will take retainers or payment options on a retainer.
Mm-hmm. And I know that you and I were in similar situations. We came to a new city, and the firms weren't clamoring for us, so we hung out our shingle. You successfully, and me most likely not considered a success story at all. But what do you see as a positive to where you're at and what you're doing? I mean, a lot of people say independence and ability to sort of live their life the way they want to and practice they want to. Why do you enjoy the practice, or are you are you looking for a job, and should I go tell the firms?
No, I'm not looking for a job. I'm very happy with where I'm at. A couple of years ago, I might have been looking for a job, but that's and frankly, I've interviewed for a couple of jobs here and there, but at the end of the day, it's just like, I'd rather kind of do my own thing, and independence is a big thing, and working half days here and there. And even if it's not working half day, it's going home and just working from home. And I feel like working from home, honestly, instead of the office. I do get more done in the office than I do at home. And it's kind of setting my own schedule, setting, how much work I need to do to, make ends meet, compared to, instead of just working, all the time. I do feel like I end up working all the time anyway, but that's just one of those things I'll have to get better at. So.
Well, and you're your toughest boss, right? Like,
right.
People think, oh, I'm going to work for myself. It's going to be cushy. Generally, people that have that mindset are not going to succeed either, right?
No, I mean, it's not cushy. It's stressful. There's a lot of different stresses with it, especially when you're in solo. And like I said, I'm the one answering my own phone, and there's times when I just want to. And frankly, I probably should just turn my phone off so I can get some other things done, and then make sure the calls go back later. The other thing is, when you're in solo, you're like, hey, if I'm not working, I'm not making money. Like, it's not like I get PTO or anything like that. So.
Right. Yeah. And there's this. I think there's this belief that you can do whatever you want in solo practice, and that's certainly the case, but maybe not taking a case on something you don't know and spinning your wheels for 2 weeks trying to learn an area of the law.
Right.
If you want to, and you want to go into that, great. Find some mentors, get some resources, get educated on it. A wide solo practice that's general practice, that can be difficult sometimes. Yep. So sort of paring it down, a little bit more focused. But I bet there are a lot of people are thinking, well, what's the advertising budget for Kenny Jacobs? And I mean, bar association fees, I guess. Golf tournament fees to golf with other attorneys.
Right. Exactly. I don't honestly spend a lot on advertising. I found out one of the better things is just requesting client reviews at the end of a case. And I've gotten a handful of those in the last year, and I think that that's kind of pushed things up. So I honestly don't do a lot of advertising. I do the lawyer referral service through OBA. I mean, that's what, $100 a year. So that's like some of the cheapest advertising you can get right there is, less than $10 a month. And I that's gone well. And a lot of it's, word of mouth. And I just had somebody call me yesterday and said, hey, you represented a buddy of mine and he gave me your number. So I want you to represent me as well. So a lot of it's word of mouth and things like that.
Reputation grows, absolutely. Your best, the clients that appreciate you the most are gonna tell their friends, and
Right.
Everyone needs a criminal defense attorney in their Rolodex to go to.
Right.
And what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a lot of consolidation of solos, small practices to firms, and I see less solos out there. But in my mind, that means that there may be a lower price point where if you don't have as great overhead, you can offer as good a services for a lower fee than what they're going to get at a large law firm, with the same benefits to them, and you can keep more of the money as long as you have your overhead in balance. And I see it as an opportunity for a lot of people to going into it. Maybe I'm in the minority on that opinion, but
no, I agree. Sometimes when you go to a firm, like a big firm, it's the retainer fees are much higher because that's just what they have to be. And like I said, my retainer, and a lot of places won't take on a case unless it's retainer paid in full. And with my practice, I can set it up to, like I said, do those reoccurring payments and accept payments on something. So,
well, I've taken up the allotted 20 minutes. Is there anything that I didn't get to that you want to get across to a student looking at maybe getting in a new attorney at a firm that's looking to get out in the solo practice? Any final words?
It's there's dark days during it, but there's so many bright spots. I love doing it. Honestly, the pandemic I wasn't sure what the pandemic was going to bring last year, and I've been as busy as I ever have. And I think part of that, honestly, is because I can now be two places at once with hey, I have to go to in-person court, say in Cass County, but I also have a video pretrial in Douglas County, so I can literally now be two places at one time. So in some respects, that's been something that's been working well for me recently. And so it's, like I said, it is tough, and there's days where it's really tough. But I think if you get into the right area, and you're doing something that you're comfortable doing with, it'll pay dividends. And don't be afraid to seek out other attorneys to ask questions and to find as mentors.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there used to be, a glut of attorneys in a certain area that were in solo practice, that you can find a solo that does this. And there's certainly areas that have more, but I'd say every single area of practice could use more, that there's not a cap on how many attorneys we have in that area. And there's certainly areas that are completely underrepresented.
Right.
I love the idea of, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's one of the other things too, is, a lot of people are married to, hey, I'm gonna just practice in Douglas and Sarpy counties. They're close to each other. And I've traveled all over the state, handling cases. And I've really enjoyed it, and like I said, so that's something, like I said, with the pandemic, that's been interesting, because some courthouses are open, some courthouses are closed. So I was in Dakota County, last month, and I was in Cass County the month before that, and I'm in Dodge County right now. So.
And so that stigma is lessening some, but they're still like, oh, big city Omaha attorney coming to our neck of the woods here. We're gonna put you through the ringer,
right.
and treat you like the outsider. But I love the idea of not having to bill for travel time. I love that idea. I love the ability of somebody in Omaha to help out somebody in Gage County when there are 5 attorneys that practice out there on a regular basis, and they don't want any of those attorneys. that's exciting for me if we can harness technology. And the people that do it, the most flexible people to do it are the solos that are like, is this a new opportunity to get some cases?
Exactly.
We have those calls, lawyer referrals service calls to outlying counties, and we've always said, oh, it's not in our county range, but maybe we need to look at adjusting that if they're comfortable, and if it's a county that allows for WebEx, Zoom hearings.
Great. Yeah.
Well, okay. I took up too much of your time, Kenny. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Thank you to Joe Bradley Law Firm, for joining us to talk about his solo practice. Joe, can you get us started by talking about your history, if you were at solo practice the whole time, or if you were in a different law firm before that?
Dave, there is scarcely a legal job I have not had over the years. Now, my first job out, I was a deputy county attorney up in Washington County for a number of years. And that was great, a lot of great experience. And then I went with the small boutique firm Timmermeyer Gross and Prentice, and I did work comp defense for, about 4 or 5 years. And work comp defense it's as sexy as you've heard, Dave. And but no, that was a great group of folks I worked with over there. But then I had the opportunity to go over and do just kind of more general employment law at the law firm of Baird Holm. And that was, I learned an awful lot over there. But the one thing I did learn was I wanted to be my own boss. So I, after I'd been there for a little while, I opened up my own shop, and I've various over the years officed with 1 to 3 other people that are also solo practitioners. But when I first started, my plan had kind of been to continue on the employment side, maybe do some like EEOC claims, workers' compensation, stuff like that. The spigot was not quite fully turned on with that, and had I been waiting by the phone for that, I think I'd still be waiting. So in the interim, I kind of developed my practice into more of a criminal and juvenile practice, and I've actually grown the juvenile part of it to be the bulk of my practice now. And so I defend either parents or kids, or I'm guardian ad litem to parents or kids. And so that's the trajectory.
And you've been out there now, is it 7, 8 years? Am I doing that right?
On my own? Well, no, I've been on my own now for 7 years. That's crazy. That is crazy, Dave.
The timeline in my head is Joe Bradley's on stage with the barristers, president, talking about how he's at Baird Holm, and then like 2 months later, it's like Joe Bradley's on his own solo practice. Like, wait, what? Hold on.
Yeah, no.
Was it all the jokes at Baird Holm's expense?
Well, yeah, no, I had to get those jokes in at the buzzer, right? Like, man, I better get these in now.
Okay, so you made the move to go out on your own. Can you describe the early years, and what was the savior? What was really tough about it?
Well, I had been thinking about going on my own for a long time, but I'd been very nervous because in undergrad I took no business classes. I didn't know, like, how do you pay taxes? Like, what do you pay yourself? What do I have to set myself up as a corporation? And then, there's that leap of faith thing too. Cause like at the time I started my own practice, I already had one kid. I had another kid that was like 2 months old. And so I'm like, do I take this leap of faith from something that's safe, but maybe not exactly what I want to be doing, and it's something that's more dicey? And what really helped me was around the same time, Joey Suter was at the public defender's office, and she was looking to try something new. And so we both, we were friends, and so we were just talking one night, and we're like, let's do this. Let's just get office space. Let's give it a shot. And I think we kind of both helped nudge each other in the right direction. And we ended up just officing together, not partnering together, because again, with what we did, it didn't really make sense to make a partnership. Just keep what you make. But I'm glad that happened, because I mean, once you get there, yes, there's still 10 million things you don't know, but you you figure it out. Case in point, the taxes. Like we had no idea what to do. We tried to go to this one tax worker, and they clearly didn't know what attorneys did. And then like dummies, we talked to another solar practitioner. He's like, I don't know, I got a guy. Yeah, I'm gonna meet you my guy. And we went to his guy. And let me tell you what, Dave, it's the easiest taxes I've ever paid in my life. He's like, he's basically the prescription we get. Here's what you got to do to not get audited. There you go. Have fun.
Turns out, as attorneys, we're generally better at filling out forms and things like that. So it's not that difficult. I mean, that's part of it, though. Is you're told, you're a professional. You do what you do. Other people, professionals, they do what they do. And so there's this. Well, gosh, am I the the person that can understand this all? Am I able to to handle my taxes or my business expenses? You've never had an employee working for you, have you?
No, that's kind of the one leap that I've been too afraid to take. But also it's one of those things where a bunch of the time I am really busy because I'm doing everything. I'm my own. I'm my receptionist. I'm my paralegal. I'm everything. But then, like, inevitably there'll be like a slow week, and I'll be like, well, like if I have a slow week, I get caught up on everything, so I can't really justify bringing in somebody else. And then on the other end of it, like, I kind of don't want to pay anybody else. I kind of want all that cash for myself, Dave.
Well, and you said it before, but you are making a comfortable living, and we don't have to get into exact numbers, but you're making a comfortable living.
Dave, a lot of zeros. I am super wealthy.
Yeah, I have a lot of zeros too, but it's before the actual numbers.
Oh yeah, I didn't say where the zeros were.
but I mean, people are like, oh, if I go into a solo practice, I won't make as much as I could, with a small firm, a mid-sized firm, whatever. But
I will say this: going from Baird to my own practice, definitely cash-wise, for the first couple of years, no, I wasn't making what I was making in Baird. But this last year, I made $10,000 above what I was making in Baird. So I'm moving in the right direction. I've made more every year that I've had my practice open, and that's just to building the client base up and having repeat clients and people that trust you and stuff like that. So,
what do you think makes you a good fit for the practice, and maybe what are some things that wouldn't fit well with the practice that you have?
Well, it's more like every law firm starts because you were frustrated with where you were, right? Like that's why every law firm that's ever begun has been some person is like, I have to march to my own drummer. And that's really my thing. I love the firms where I practiced, and I love the offices where I've been, but I would find that I was butting my head against the wall sometimes when it came to some of the other attorneys I had to work with, whereas all my clients always loved me. Like, I had great client control, I had great client satisfaction, but then sometimes the powers that be would have, sorts of stuff that wouldn't make sense to me or that I didn't care for. And you do that enough times and you're like, I don't know, these guys make it look easy. I can do this. Like, so.
Right. Well, and, I guess there's maybe a misconception that there is all this time that's spent not practicing and doing all this other stuff. I mean, what sort of just, easy, quick breakdown would you say of like lawyering versus administration compared to when you were at firms and county attorney's office?
Oh, I mean, it's night and day. I mean, it takes a while to kind of get used to it, but I mean, the biggest headache being on your own is, of course, billing. But I've got it down to a science where once every 3 months, I just basically take a week where I know I'm getting nothing done but billing. And I just sit down and I do it. And, it's ripping off a Band-Aid, but, I can rip off a Band-Aid every 3 months if it means a payday at the end. And with the clients I have, I almost never get a bill returned. Everybody pays what I send them. Well, because that's the bonus. When you start at the big firms like I did, Dave, because some clowns go out there and, here's a little tidbit. Some clowns go out there and they don't know how to label things. Like the way I see people label their bills, it's like they don't want to get paid. They'll just put 1 hour lawyer work. Like, oh, lawyer work, 1 hour. No, break it down to 0.6s. What are you doing?
Right. And I talked about this with another attorney on this solo school that we're doing here about the value, like really valuing what you do. And he's saying, you know, you owe this. There's value to what I do. You need to pay this. It's client interaction, but it's also valuing yourself. And sometimes we're like, ooh, don't want to get into talking about bills and everything like that. Well, get paid for what you do.
Well, and also, I mean, it helps you because in order to get that relationship where you know they're going to pay that bill, you have to make the client happy with your services. And if you already have that relationship where they're so happy with what you're giving them, you're keeping the lines of communication open. You're always a phone call away. I mean, they're already so happy with what you're doing for them that, I mean, of course they're going to pay that bill. Like it's, and I mean, it makes me a better attorney too, because with some people it'll be like, this is a big bill. Oh, I better do some work on this case. Like,
you talk about open communication, and one concern may be that your clients are going to be calling you at all hours, and you don't have necessarily the support staff to sort of take that burden off you. I don't know if that's even true anymore with most firms and their attorneys. I think that if they give their clients their information, they're going to have that connection. But can you talk a bit about maybe having to set those boundaries because you're answering your own phone?
You can set those boundaries, and you can be, I mean, I'll tell you this, as a solo, you can be as available or unavailable as you want to be. I mean, I use, as I'm sure most solos do, Google Voice, and that's just an app for your phone where essentially you get a special office number, but you have it where it dials straight into your phone. And when they call in, they have to say who they are and who they want to talk to, and you can screen it, you can not screen it, you can talk to them, and most importantly, at the end of the day, you can hit the do not disturb button where they're not allowed to get you. But what I love about Google Voice is I can text my clients to that number, they can text me, we can keep in touch, and it's all the benefits of the cell phone. But I'm never going to get a call at 3 a.m. because, Dave, with the family, juvenile, and all that stuff I do, there ain't nothing I can do for them at 3 a.m. But sometimes they'll call me at 3 a.m., but there's nothing I can do for them.
So if you could go back and talk to Joe Bradley 7 years ago, first of all, damn fine looking gentleman. So,
well, I would tell him to buy a lot of Bitcoin.
Right. Other than investment advice, and Back to the Future type references, what would you tell him about the solo practice that may be helpful?
I would say, set up the practice that makes sense for you, not the practice that you think you're supposed to set up. Don't look at other people's solo practices or small practices or big practices and think that's the only way it can be done. Because, I mean, you can, for years, I've thought of my practice as just like a pie chart, right? Like here's the number I want to get to, and here's the different pieces I need to get there. And whether that's made up of civil plus court appointments plus this and that and the other, nobody cares how you make the money as long as you can have your business. So I mean, because I didn't work comp for so long, I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do some work comp plaintiff work, and that's going to be the big paydays. And I mean, let's see, it's been 7 years. I had one of those cases, and to be fair, it was a big payday, not big enough to carry me for 7 years.
Well, and when we've done this in the past, we've had a work comp attorney. I'll try to get him on, but he was talking about how it was really a pump to be primed on work comp, right? It's nice because the evidentiary standards are a bit lower, so a solo practice it can fit with that. You don't need all the support staff and all the attorneys to take a case. But at the same time, it takes a long time to get those.
Well, it takes a long time to get that pump going, and it is in no way anywhere near guaranteed cash. Plus, if you have a case worth its salt, you have to pump money into that case. Right. So with I'm experts, medical stuff. So, I mean, there's some cases where you're throwing good money after bad, and all it takes is a few of those not to hit, and you're like, this business model has problems.
Do you have any reservation? I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. So
What?
now people know when we're recording this. Do you have any caution signs, any things that you'd say, really be careful about this, you know, not just right now, but maybe you're seeing trends and you have fellow solos that are out there, you know, things that just watch for, don't blow past those stop signs.
No, I mean, I would say a couple things. The one big one where I've seen my solo friends get in trouble is overhead, right? Like kind of biting off more than you can chew. And I'm talking in terms of staff, business space, you know, office space. Because it's, I mean, for what I do, I mean, Dave, you've been in my office. It's perfectly fine. It does not cost me an arm and a leg, as well it should not. Like I just need a place for my desk and files and meet clients. And it's, you know, I won't be meeting Berkshire Hathaway there anytime soon. So I think we're safe. But yeah, I would say just keep your overhead very low. And if you want to expand, you always can, but it's much harder to go back the other way and much more painful to do that. I would also say, I mean, think partnerships through all the way, because I've seen a lot of people kind of team up in ways that, you know, I felt like I could see a mile away that was not going to work out, and or that like it wasn't necessary. Like I've seen a number of people, other solo practitioners that like started a good solo practice, but will like join up in like small and mid-sized firms, and I see the benefit that firm is getting from them, but I do not see the reciprocal benefit to the solo practitioner. Like they bring in this big book of business, but then they find that like the cases aren't from the firm that maybe were promised aren't flowing back, because every firm I've ever seen, whenever there's a dry time, you know, basically lowest on the totem pole gets the fewest amount of cases in a dry time. And I understand this pandemic has been quite a dry time for many practitioners. So, you know, just make sure before you kind of make that leap from solo to like that next level before you're ready to do that.
Yeah, well, and you've made your practice not on spending a lot of money in advertising. You know, the court appointments that you were talking about, which we do our walk through the courts every fall, and we talk about the court appointments. It is a not hard process of introducing yourself to court staff and judges and telling them your background and getting on the list and doing well on the cases that they give you, and, you know, return business because you are a competent attorney. But I mean, it's not Google ads, and it's not penny saver, you know, ads or anything like that. There's money to be made by simply talking to other people in the community.
No, absolutely. And for me, with the court appointments, it's kind of a volume business, right? Like it's any given case is not a huge amount, but if I'm, you know, working 5, 6, 7, 8 of those files every day, you know, it adds up pretty quickly.
Absolutely. You know, if you are interested in getting back into the EEOC stuff, I'll have to hook you up with Doug Novotny, who, I mean, he's another sole practitioner, and maybe we'll have him on the school, and he does very well with plaintiff side EEOC stuff, and he worked for EEOC for a couple
I will
years.
say my first year out, I did a bunch of those EEOC cases, and they were super fun because they're all very tawdry and, you know, all like
and you have the ladder on the way in, so you kind of have like the groundwork that you're like, yeah, this
and
is
those cases have some great villains. I mean, you know, just some great villains. But it was another one of those kind of like the work comp where they weren't all paydays, and so it just got tough for me to justify. Like, if I work this case, I get paid immediately. If I work this case, maybe I get paid. So I'm like, you know what? We're going with the immediate pay.
No, I hear that. I do. And I mean, you're low overhead, but you're volume-based business that is somewhat diversified, and you have returning clientele. So it builds as people know you and know you're good. I mean, I've hit all my points that I wanted you to get across, Joe. I mean, you have a life too outside of practice. You're not necessarily working 90 hours every week.
No, I mean, that's, to me,
the only person there.
That's the biggest bonus of the whole thing. I mean, when I was working at the firms, I mean, when I was at the comp firm, I mean, jurisdiction for those trials is wherever the injury happens. And in Nebraska, we got how many counties? 9,000 last time I checked. And so, you know, I was having to, you know, I was on the road, you know, once a week, twice a week. I would stay overnights in hotels before these trials, and you know, that was fine, but it started to get old after not too long. And you know, when I was at the super big firm, you know, as well, they expected those some crazy hours. Like you got big billables, you got a lot of stuff going on. Whereas with me, if I got work, I work. If I don't, I don't. And I've never missed a kid's soccer game. I've never missed a ballet recital, you know, so quality of life is high, Dave. It's high.
Well, I appreciate that. I like to point out, it seems like every single time that I enjoyed it, although I wasn't as successful because maybe I was still, you know, thinking that I needed to practice in a certain area and avoiding areas that actually paid money. So I had my head in the sand a little bit more and wasn't willing to adjust like you did. So it was great when this came along because it's a lot easier
but in a way you did adjust, because Dave, what do they always tell us in law school? You don't got to be in the courtroom. You don't. And who has to deal with more of us lame lawyers every day? You. OBA, baby.
Yeah, it feels like I'm practicing. All right. Well, I don't have anything else. Is there anything I missed that these potential solo practitioners need to know?
Any tips that we left?
Don't call you to ask for advice. I mean, well, I guess that's one thing. You know, you had Joy that was soloing next to you, and that was helpful that you're both in the rabbit hole together and reaching out to people that you've. You know,
I mean, there is essentially all of us. It's a very small community of solos in Omaha. Like it's not small, but it's small in that we all know each other, and it has been very helpful. People are very generous in helping. Like if I need a form, I'll shoot out an email blast. If I need coverage, I'll shoot out an email blast, and people do the same to me. And I've never not had somebody cover something for me that needed covering. I've never not had somebody at least put me on the right path for, like, you know, a form or a type of brief, so I'm not having to reinvent the wheel every 10 seconds. Because again, it's none of us have law clerks. None of us want to start at zero at Westlaw just typing in, here's the issue. We want to.
Well, and we have ego. I mean, you go through law school, are you not going to have an ego that I should be able to find all the answers? I should be on my own being able to do that. Well, you know what? You're not a superhero. You need to ask other people. They've been through it. Don't fall into the same, you know, mistakes. Use the resource of the community for sure.
Well, that's the irony. The irony of the solo practice is that it's not really solo. Like you're in a law firm with every other solo practitioner in town, and it like you said, nobody really brings ego into it. If they do, they are quickly banished from the email listserv.
you got to just, yes, I need help. I need an answer. It's okay.
Well, no, that's when you're on your own. When the first time you ask for help for something, you feel so stupid, and then you realize, you know, we all just know these little tiny little islands of law, and it is not stupid to be like, I've never done a divorce before. Like, how does one even begin that? And I guarantee you have a friend or somebody that knows how to get you started, and it's not rocket science. And you didn't waste a day zipping through Westlaw and reading treatises when you could, you know, be actually practicing law.
Oh man, those were the days though, weren't they? Unlimited Westlaw account access and treatise, the best parts of law school, just being abused by the firms for your 50-state survey access.
The best parts of law school was when I would see whichever club was going on that had pizza, and I would join that club for the day.
Oh man, and well, at Creighton, it's like only Godfathers apparently that they can order. It was just like
Oh,
so much Godfathers. I don't know why that was, but okay. Well, we've taken too much of your time, Joe. Thank you, and I really do appreciate it. A successful solo practice, 7 years in, and you can still make fun of other attorneys, and they still call you a good lawyer. Look at that. That is something.
It's great. Well, Dave, I'll say this, you'll be proud of me. This morning in my hearing, I had a line that is as good as any simple country lawyer line I've ever done in barristers. I said, what was it? Oh no, they were trying to put one of my clients in the youth facility in Kearney. And I was outraged, Dave. And I said, you cannot, I go, the reason you want to put my client there is because of budgetary concerns, and we cannot have our children shoulder the budgetary crises of our state. Oh, I was indignant. I was waving fingers and hands. Oh, it was fun.
That's a great argument. One that I'm sure the judge took a half a second longer in the closing of the eyes and opening them, right?
Yeah. At the very least, they furrow their brow.
Oh man. Well, we will have you on other OBA things too. So anybody that's not sick of Joe Bradley, we'll see him on other things as well. But thanks for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Dave, always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Everybody, I'd like to introduce you to Patrick McNamara. Patrick is a former secretary of the Omaha Bar Association. He has been in town for a number of years. He's my best buddy. He's been in solo practice. He's been in small firms. He's been in a larger firm. So he's somebody who I think can give us sort of the comparison between the two. And he's got a lovely dog, Molly, there in the background. Patrick, thanks for being on the Solo School series with us.
Dave, I appreciate it. Thanks very much. Yes, so I moved here about 8 years ago. Met you and some of the other OBA people at the wine event, like a month into moving here in January of 2013. You know, it's been really nice practicing here ever since. I went to law school in New York. Did a few years of practice in New York with insurance defense and some solo work in New York as well. My wife is a native Omaha, and we met in law school in New York. And so, yeah, we moved here January 2013. I worked at a small firm when I first moved here. After about a year, I wanted to see if I could make it on my own. And I practiced for about 6 years building a McNamara law firm, going from just renting a cubicle at a Hightower ref's office to having, I think at the most at one time we had 6 employees. You know, we really worked hard to just give our clients a lot of value. And, you know, there were a lot of, you take the good with the bad with everything. And I would say that definitely fits to building a solo practice or a small firm. You know, you're able to decide exactly how you want to represent your clients and how you want to run your office and how you want to work with your staff and what kind of flexibility you want to give everybody. And you also are responsible for everything from making sure that there's coffee in the office when someone comes in to making sure that you have a paper shredding account to everything in between, including, you know, having accounts with all the courts and everyone to file. Everything kind of falls on you and potentially your staff if you're fortunate enough to have a staff. And I will say that depending on your personality, if someone wants to go out on their own, it might be a good idea to bring some staff on early as possible. Some people can get away with not having it at all. I was somebody that definitely needed staff right away. And you have to know, I think it's important to know your strengths and your weak spots if you're going to be going out solo on your own or building a firm, just because you've got to have all bases covered. And, you know, typically at a firm, you're going to have that because of just the number of people there. But it's important to make sure that you have a wide range of abilities from the people that you work with when you're in a small firm. And, you know, the people that are watching this, they've watched Joe Bradley and Kenny Jacobs before you. And so then you're the third of the first part here. And then we're going to have at least 3 more in a second part. But
but their practices are generally without support staff and without, and mostly criminal defense
Sure.
is where, and appointments and things like that. That was how they built it. But you, much like my failed venture at solo practice, you did the civil litigation, business formations, things like that. Can you talk a bit about your practice and when you built it and sort of how you found, you know, the business to keep the doors open and lights on?
Yeah, well, I think an important thing, obviously, when you begin is to write a business plan, but it's got to be a vague business plan unless you have something really set in stone about where, like, if you're going to build a practice around doing all juvenile work or criminal defense, you can set that in stone. But otherwise, at least at first, you have to be willing to pretty much take what comes in the door and be willing to educate yourself on exactly that. My practice came a lot from just making friends in Omaha and a lot of business people and dealing with their legal issues, whether it be forming business for them, setting up partnerships for them, dealing with lawsuits when they got in trouble or had a dispute, and then some estate planning as well, just because it's kind of a natural fit when you're doing this type of business planning. But yeah, at the beginning, my business plan was pretty vague. And I think that's important and something you got to be willing to do unless you have a very specific way of generating clients.
Right. And you know, building those relationships and actively pursuing meeting new people every day. Right.
Yep.
And letting them know that you can be their lawyer, you can help them with what they need. It's a bit more actively promoting yourself than maybe we think of when we get into law school and think about how we're going to practice. You know, there's a bit more hustle involved. You were involved in some networking groups too that helped, right?
Yeah, I was very heavy. I never really did a lot of advertising, whether it be traditional or online advertising. You know, I did some AdWords and some Facebook ads and everything, but really where I was able to develop my business was not even just networking, going and handing out business cards at some event where you meet 100 people, just really building like strong ongoing relationships with people and building relationships with people that they know, and really just building a real strong network. And that's really helped me to today. I mean, the people that I met the first couple of years of my practice, they're some of the best clients now. They're some of my best referral sources. And they gave me a lot of freedom and I hope job security in my current job. I'm an attorney at Gooseman Law Firm, which I love, and I've gotten to take really my existing practice with me. And because of that, I've been able to really take a lot of the benefits of solo practice, from the flexibility and choosing to manage my caseload and choosing what cases to take and not take, and bring that along with me and take that into a firm. Whereas if I was just maybe a lateral without a book of business, I'd be kind of beholden to exactly what the other partners at the firm wanted or something like that. It's allowed me to continue on what I liked best about running my own practice and move it onto a larger firm, which I really enjoyed.
And you were heavy into case management software as a way to streamline efficiently running your office and have your support staff help as well. Can you talk about the system that you used and the benefits you saw from it?
Yes, so I used MyCase, which is a cloud-based practice management system, which I really enjoyed. I really think it's important, even for a solo, to do that. I mean, whether it's MyCase or Clio or I think Rocket Matter, there's a few others. First of all, I would definitely go with one of the larger ones, just because customer service and everything is really important when you're running and making sure that it's all working and everything when you're running your own practice. But the great thing about having everything in one place was that you're able to give your clients a professional looking service, so that you have a client portal for clients to be able to upload documents, view documents, communicate with you securely, view their bills, pay their bills, put stuff on your calendar. I mean, there were things in it I didn't use. I mean, I could have set it where people could go into my calendar, sign up for a consultation, and pay for the consultation, all without me having to do a thing, which is really nice. I didn't take advantage of those kind of features, but those things are all definitely there. Give me 1 second. The dog is actually on the kitchen table right now, and it's.
Hey, it's all right. It's real life.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, in the case management software, I mean, nowadays we're like, oh gosh, I need that if I'm working from home or what have you. I mean, back in the day, it was sort of like ahead of your time, but now we think that this is essential to be able to work from your phone.
Sure, and
from your laptop.
I think it was essential. Again, it does make you look professional, but it also allows, as long as you're willing to keep up with it, and when you receive a new document, you file it properly, and you tag it, and you move your emails into the system, or you run. A lot of the newer apps actually will let you run your email through it, and they'll have all these auto migration features that, if you receive an email from a particular person, it automatically drops it into that person's file. There's a new software that our firm is looking at potentially transitioning to, where anytime you do anything in the software, it creates a billing entry and prompts you, hey, do you want to enter a billing entry? You spent 8 minutes writing this email. Do you want to put a 0.2 in? Here's what we've come up with as a potential time entry for it. Is that correct? The moment you hit send, it prompts you to create a time entry and mostly pre-populates it for you. And that's really great. It keeps you from losing time. If you save a Word document to the file, it'll say, hey, I noticed you saved this Word document to the file. Do you want to keep a time entry? How much time did you spend using it? I think that's hugely important. I would have really enjoyed that to begin with. And the other thing is, like, putting your time in, being able to put your time in on your phone, on your laptop, from anywhere is really helpful, because you lose a lot of time. If you're in the car and you're on a phone call and then you don't go right to the office and put it down, you may never realize that time. And that's hugely important, making sure to capture all your time, especially because as a solo, you're going to be doing so much administrative work, whether it be creating your invoices, paying bills, dealing with just any kind of administrative thing, doing your marketing. You're only going to have a few hours a day tops that you have free to actually do legal work. And so you want to make sure you're capturing every moment of that in order to make sure you get your bills out and that they're accurate, and that you're billing for all your time and then getting paid for all your time.
So one thing that's a little bit different with being a business lawyer or being general civil attorney in the solo practice world is maybe the need for support staff to help you with a high amount of volume or little short period of time, right? You have a business client, they need some stuff done very quickly. It's almost too much for one person. You need that support staff that can really help you. What did you find worked in that scenario, and what would you probably tell yourself, maybe not this, if we did this again?
Sure. So I wouldn't say that I really had a volume practice, but one thing I felt was really important with my support staff was having the staff know really everything going on with a case, so that if a client called, they knew they were able to talk to the client, keep the client informed, get back to a client quickly. So if I'm, in a deposition or prepping for trial or in court doing something else, the matter can potentially keep moving forward without me being the only person that, if I have a day where I don't have time to work on anything but one matter, it doesn't mean everything else comes to a halt. So I think it's important that if you are going to have staff, that you keep them informed. You're not just giving them little piecemeal projects here. You want to explain what's going on in a case, why we're doing it, what to look out for, anticipate what may come down the road. That way you can really have your staff work for you and help you out.
Yeah.
And cover for you.
Oh, sure.
Which is big for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, customer service, business clients expect customer service at a high level. And so you have to reflect the way that they see their business too. So absolutely, empower that sports to help you with that. So I mean, we gotta cut to the truth here. It's not all amazingness and $1 million payouts and in the early years of solo practice, right? I mean, you got to have a business plan that also says, where am I going to get the money for rent and food?
Well, yeah, you have to. I mean,
gas?
you have to watch your budget, and just because you have a good month or a good quarter doesn't mean you're going to have the same quarter again. And if you have a rough quarter, it doesn't mean the next quarter is going to be rough. That's why it's important to really keep looking at your metrics and seeing where you're really seeing like where your clients are coming from, what you can expect down the road, and really continue to study that. Yeah, it's a lot of work, especially if you are going to be continuing to build your expenses. It's something you definitely have to watch for, because I told you I think I had 6 staff at one point. That along with rent, I mean, I had to bring in a lot each month just to pay the bills, just to make payroll, and that's something to definitely keep aware of. There are attorneys that run their practices on a shoestring, and some of them are super successful by doing that. I think it takes a certain type that's willing to really that's very self-motivated and not need to collaborate and rely on other people. But if you're able to take home 90% of what you bring in versus 20% of what you bring in, you potentially can make a lot of money, or at least make a very comfortable living. So it depends on the type of practice you want to run. It depends on the type of practice that you think is best suited for you, and best suited for the clients that you want to have.
Yeah. And, we talked about with Joe a little bit, but the idea of taking out contingency fee cases, there could be a potential big payday years down the road after hundreds and hundreds of hours. And so just kind of be wary of that, I suppose, that, if those cases are really draining your time and your support staff's time as a solo, right? Those could break your firm before they get to judgment.
Well, you need to at least make sure there's a balance, because you're basically acting as a bank for these clients when you do a contingency matter, and if you're going to put in 10 hours a week for a year on a case and hopefully get paid in the end on it, you want to make sure that the amount is equal to or close to what you would have earned on an hourly case. And so you also want to have a balance. Sorry about the dog, everybody. I don't know what she's even barking at. There's not even any windows open that you could see out of. But you want to make sure that you have a balance so that even if you do take on a fair amount of contingency work, that you have flat fee and hourly work that is able to pay the bills, or at least you're doing a volume of contingency work and it's predictable. Like, let's say you do, you're a plaintiff's lawyer that do rear end PI cases, and that if I take on 50 cases in a year, I'm going to start settling a case a week or something, and that's going to continually happen. That's something that's reliable. So no matter what, you need some type of reliable income when you're dealing with contingency cases, in addition to them, just because there's not going to be a way for you to not get paid on a case or on any of your cases for 3 months and still be able to keep the lights on and still be able to run your practice. There needs to be, at a minimum, reliable income to at least pay your bills each month. And hopefully some of the larger contingency cases, the ones that take a longer time, that they're not dragging you down, and that you can they're the cherry on top, I guess.
Yeah. So taking a lot of your time, I'll end it with one question, multi-part. Your favorite things from solo practice, things that you wouldn't step in those holes again, the least favorite things from solo practice.
Sure. So I mean, what I really loved the flexibility. I love being able to take a case on from the start, decide how to deal with a case, planning for the future, getting to do marketing and building business relationships and business development. I mean, a lot of that I get to do now, even not in a solo environment, although I don't think I'd have the ability or the experience to be able to do those if I hadn't gone through solo first. So that foundation allowed me to bring a lot of that along to my current firm. As far as minefields and areas to be careful of, I mean, watching expenses is hugely important. Making sure to deal with clients that you have difficulty with, and communicate honestly and openly with your clients. And then one thing that's tough is, depending on your area and your ability to kind of pick up the phone and call other attorneys, you're typically handling work that you've never done before, and you may not know what to do, and you have to be willing to either figure it out and make sure you're right about it, or as close to right as you can be, and also be willing to reach out to someone and say, hey, listen, I saw that you filed this motion in some case last year, like, and that you had some good luck with it, or good results with it. Can you tell me what you did and what to look out for? So being willing to reach out to people, I think, is hugely important.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You didn't have my notes in front of you, but you checked all the boxes there, Patrick. Anything else for the good of the order that you want to add? I'm done with my questions, but anything else?
Well, I guess a little plug for the OBA. I had a lot of my caseload come from the Omaha Bar Association Lawyer Referral Service, and I was able to really, I mean, that was definitely a big part of my practice the first few years. So I would encourage any young lawyers to get involved with the Lawyer Referral Service. I mean, you know, it also gives you a lot of experience. I mean, you're going to end up doing consultations. You know, you might do 6 consultations for each one that becomes like a client that really ends up being a paying client or a worthwhile client. But you learn a lot in those consultations. You learn how to do consultations. So I think it's really good experience, and you can definitely build a practice off it depending on the area that you want to practice in.
Yeah, we definitely do have areas that need more attorneys in it, that are general civil stuff and not the criminal stuff. We actually don't get much criminal work through Lawyer Referral Service, but
I got a lot of employment, a lot of plaintiffs' employment work, some general civil, a lot of people that wanted to form LLCs, that kind of stuff. Pretty simple, standard. Typically, it's clients that don't have a lot of business relationships to begin with. They don't know a lot of lawyers to begin with. It's a lot of time the first time that they're speaking with an attorney. So it's a great way to get experience dealing with people like that, dealing with people who don't have a lot of experience in the business community, and maybe helping them along. And I have some clients that I met through a Lawyer Referral Service that are my client 6-7 years later.
Yeah. I too, as a LRS member back in the day, do sing its praises as somebody who was looking for work, looking for contacts, and Donna does a great job with it. So definitely a good plug there. Well, thank you so much for your time, Patrick. Really appreciate it. The view from a business solo practice that grew, and somebody who's looking from the other side now that they're at a bigger firm. So we appreciate that. We did this back in the day a few years ago at Creighton Law School. I'm glad that we could do it for whoever wants to watch it. So if I'll give them your details in case they want to follow up asking more questions.
Sure, that's fine. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.